The following is a presentation of Geekster Media.
Remember that show back then? Remember that show? Turn on the TV, time was always flying. Why did they have to end so many shows you forgotten? Now that we've got a podcast, we can release all the shows from our hands. Yeah, will you be the most TV dudes you'll ever listen to? As long as we keep on talking sitcoms and cartoons from back in the day. Okay, we confess we're obsessed, but we got a podcast to help you remember that show. Hey there, TV lovers, and welcome to episode 26 of Remember That Show, the podcast where we revisit the obscure or forgotten TV shows of the 80s and 90s. One question: would you like to hear my podcast about sitcoms that didn't last, and a few that got canceled so fast, but we remember all of them? I'm Adam.
And I'm William Bruce West. As you may recall from our last episode, we decided to give each other a Christmas gift this year, allowing each of us a free choice selection of any series we wanted to discuss without justification. So this is my gift to Adam, talking about a show that truly qualifies for our podcast, Out of This World. You might remember it, you might not, but let's get into it.
That's right, we gotta check out our theme song. All right, so Will, our show this time around deals with space aliens visiting Earth, having children. Do you have a favorite alien from TV history?
Alf.
Just Alf.
like I saw this question and it's one of those, like, I probably got 1,000 answers. Zordon, Alpha 5, technically The Masked Rider, and that's just one franchise. But like, when it comes to people our age and what we grew up in, Alf is iconic. Alf is almost to the 80s what Gen 13 was to the 90s. Like, it really only works in that period of time, and they've tried with both to bring them back, and it just doesn't have that magic to it.
The people in our audience right now are saying, what, 13? You non-cops.
We have crossover. I know some people slightly older than us might say Mork and Mindy, but like, to me, it's Alf.
For me, it's a little bit later in the history of television, but it's Dick Solomon from Third Rock from the Sun. I loved that show so much. I watched it for many, many seasons, and John Lithgow just delivered every single episode. His line delivery was always at 11, no matter what the circumstance. Like, I even attended a taping of that show in high school with my friend Nassim that I brought up before, and it was just as funny live, if not funnier, to see them do all their scenes. But the writing of the Dick character was just funny how he amplified every human emotion, right? Every new experience, because it was brand new to him. And so it was either like the most euphoric thing ever to happen or the end of the world in his eyes, So it used every bit of his thespian skill to bring it to life.
That's a good example. I really did enjoy that show, but I don't miss that show. But you're right about Lithgow. Like, he cranked it up to 11. So, well, another element of our show today were the special effects that involve freezing the video image, making things disappear, reversing the video, and more. Adam, do you have a TV show special effect that fascinated you as a kid?
Well, another show that I hope we cover someday is My Secret Identity. And wouldn't you know it, this is also a series about a kid with superpowers. Are you sensing a trend here? But what fascinated me about this Canadian production was they gave the kid the ability to fly, but not really. He could become weightless, and he could only propel himself through the use of a can of compressed air. He would have like one in each hand, and he would use it to push himself along. So it was fascinating and frustrating. He's on a harness. He's just kind of floating there, and he would slowly move along. He'd be in pursuit of a bad guy or go up to the top story of a building, but he was always moving so slow, and it frustrated me because I was like, his power was super speed also was another one. So why why couldn't he just like kick his legs real fast to propel himself or something? But it was always no, just spraying his little aerosol cans and moving very slowly. So it fascinated me because it baffled me, that choice.
I guess mine is the lack of special effect. Like, a show that really meant a lot to me growing up. My mom claims that, like, my dad and I used to watch it, but unlike Harvey Korman, I don't have those memories. But The Greatest American Hero, where, like, it should have had special effects, but they got around it by, like, oh, he's just really crappy at using his powers. So, like, he would try to fly, and he'd slam into a brick wall. I mean, it gets old fast, but when you really look at it, you're like, that's a real smart way around a budget. You know, it's like the script probably came in. It's like, okay, he flies here. It's like, no, this is The Greatest American Hero. He crashes here. You know, so that's the one that sticks out to me. I mean, and then always the Zach Morris timeout, because it's such a weird aspect of a weird franchise. You know, he's not a warlock. He doesn't, like, he shouldn't have these powers. I kind of wish they were explained because I'm that kid, and they aren't even used that much. Probably maybe less than 6 times over the course of the franchise, but it's important.
Absolutely. And, you know, he may have some connection in my head canon to the star of our show we're going to be talking about today. But speaking of aliens, you know, also The Greatest American Hero, that was an alien costume that he had that gave him his powers. But wait, actually, Will, I see an eerie beam in the sky. It's emanating from some type of spacecraft. Must be time to talk about the TV landscape that led to Out of This World getting the green light.
Well, as we've been discussing, aliens coming to Earth for some wacky hijinks was a classic TV trope by 1987. Nick at Night had plenty of reruns of My Favorite Martian starring Ray Walston and a young Bill Bixby to go around, and in the early 80s, Robin Williams took the airwaves by storm as a hyperactive alien visitor from the planet Ork on Mork and Mindy. Shortly thereafter, the more dramatic V television miniseries was a ratings juggernaut, as was a show starring a furry, wisecracking puppet from the planet Melmac, Alf. The primetime hilarity of Alf even spawned 2 Saturday morning cartoon series, but that's a discussion for another time. Bottom line, aliens were a topic of interest. Adam, what do you think was the appeal of the stories of aliens on Earth that played on television screens from the 50s to the 80s?
If I was writing my college thesis on this right now, I think it would have everything to do with the fact that Americans are terrified by the concept of invaders. It's in our culture. Even though we're a country founded by immigrants, anybody coming from another place is seen as weird, a possible threat, right? And obviously in the 50s, science fiction TV often used aliens as a metaphor for the fear of like Russian communists. And that was getting mixed in with the space race and everything we could do there. And then that was really repeating itself in the 80s because now we had the nuclear arms race. We're still worried about communists in Russia, right? It's an interesting situation where the American citizens were like petrified that any day they could be nuked by these unknown monsters from across the world, right? So the way to deal with those fears, it seems, was through humor on sitcoms, and it was a comfortable way of examining our own humanity, like the things about American culture that would be both strange and appealing to aliens from space or from another country, you know? So you watch Night Court, you get Yakov Smirnoff, you know, or you'd get Alf making his observations and things like that. But what do you think? Why are aliens this thing that we always seem to come back to?
Well, that was a smart answer right there, and I don't know how to follow. I mean, it's everything you said, but I also think the 80s were important because of the space shuttle. It's like we were getting closer. Like when you go back to like science fiction of the 50s and 60s, it was aspirational. It was like, this is what it could be to fight an alien on the moon. And then like we get to the 80s, it's like, hey, we got this like airplane that basically goes to space now and it can come back. You don't have to like crash into the ocean in a capsule. Like it lands. And like we're getting closer to finding things out there. So I feel like that really kind of spiked things in my mind in the 80s. And then it kind of plateaus. Then there's like this fever pitch of sci-fi and alien stuff in the early 90s. But by the time the like shuttle program is like sundowning, it's kind of old hat. Like, we kind of need something like SpaceX ain't doing it and like Virgin's not doing it. We need some kind of thing for like a new golden age of sci-fi, or else everything's gonna try to be Battlestar or Lost. It's like we need that injection of just fear and creativity.
I think it's already been explored for so many decades, but I think AI is the new alien. Like that's the thing we're afraid of, no?
Don't you use those letters on this show. They're listening.
All right, well, Will, we better get out of here then. Find out what Out of This World was really about. Yes, we need to get into our elevator pitch.
Out of This World was a first-run syndicated sitcom that first aired in the fall of 1987 on NBC as part of a program putting new syndicated series in the slot just before prime time as a lead-in to the network's original programming. Also part of this experiment was a show we hope to cover one day, if we can find more than one episode to watch, She's the Sheriff, starring Suzanne Summers. But back to our topic for this episode. Out of This World ran for 4 seasons in syndication from 1987 to 1991, and the theme song for the series was a jazzy version of the 1944 Bing Crosby song Swingin' on a Star. The series starred Maureen Flanagan as Evie Garland, a girl who discovers on her 13th birthday that her father is an alien from the planet Antarius, which means she will begin manifesting supernatural powers, the first of which is the ability to freeze time by touching her index fingers together and unfreeze time by clapping her hands together. Evie can speak to her father, Troy, voiced by Burt Reynolds, through a glass pyramid-like cube, but his face is never seen. It's worth mentioning that Burt Reynolds had not yet moved into television at this point, though he would go on to star in the sitcom Evening Shade just a few years later, and was still considered a movie star in 1987. So Reynolds asked to be uncredited in his vocal performance, and the opening credits list Troy as being played by himself. Evie also meets other alien relatives and develops additional powers as the series goes on, which we will discuss shortly.
Now, Will, I do have a little fun fact about that theme song, and it's very strange. So I don't know where you watched it to catch up on this show, but I was watching it on archive.org, which were like HD transfers. I think were from the German DVDs. That's the only place this was ever released on home media. And the theme song is not this guy singing. It's a woman singing it, and they changed the lyrics even. And I think like, we'll do an original version of this song that we don't have to pay for or something.
Would you like to swing on a star? Carry moonbeams home in a jar. And be better off than you are. Or would you rather go to Earth? Would you like to swing on a star? Take some moonbeams home in a jar. And be better than you are. Do you want to stay on Earth?
Oh God, thank you. I thought it was a Mandela effect or I was having a stroke. Because the one thing I remember from that show is the theme song. And as I was watching it, I was like, this isn't what I remember. Because I was watching it on YouTube. There's one guy who has the complete series, but for some reason, the first 2 seasons are like unlisted or blocked. So you can only watch like seasons 3 through 4, but all of the compilations on YouTube have the woman. This is not how that song went. Oh, I was so scared this was the new timeline. That really
Said everything right. I know. 'Cause
Yeah.
it threw me at first. I was like, oh, was this the original one for the pilot only? And then I kept going through. I'm like, no, it's everywhere. I'm like, this is not right. But yeah, let's get into a little bit more of the universe of Out of This World, because Evie lives in a fictional coastal town of Marlow, California, with her mother, Donna Garland, played by Donna Pascal, and has regular visits from her jovial Uncle Beano, portrayed by Joe Alasky. Another frequent visitor to the Garland home is the mayor of Marlow, Kyle Applegate, played by Doug McClure, and the wacky town eccentric Buzz Belmondo, played by Buzz Belmondo. But the show isn't just about a teenager dealing with old people. She's got her best friend Lindsay, played by Christina Nigra, and her hunky boyfriend Chris, played by Steve Burton. Now, fun fact here, Will. Christina Nigra was actually the original choice for Evie. She was cast in the role. Then they found Maureen Flanagan and gave her the role instead. And as a consolation prize, they wrote Christina in as the best friend character of Lindsay, which has got to be rough.
That ain't a fun fact to Christina.
But Will, I gotta know, were you watching Out of This World during its original run in syndication at this time?
Nope.
Wow.
And like, it's weird because this is right up my alley, but no, I was not. But there's a reason for it. In DC, it aired on an affiliate, WFTY, which was Channel 50. And I know I've mentioned it in other episodes, but before Channel 50 became a WB affiliate, it was 90% infotainment. You know, like, I'm not gonna say infomercials because that's when they're selling you something. These were like grainy yoga workout videos and like things, like it was just stuff to fill the air. It was almost like cable access, but it's just on like a local independent station. So it's like I was talking to my friend Mike today, and he asked me, did first run syndication, did those shows have time slots? You know, like, was there a regular time you tuned in for these shows? And I was like, yeah, usually, like, you knew Star Trek The Next Generation was Saturdays at 6, things like that. But with Out of This World, it was a schedule plug. Like, let's say Channel 50 randomly showed a movie that happened to be 2.5 hours instead of 2 hours, then that other half hour would be Out of This World. They just plug it in to balance out the schedule. So it was never on at the same time, like at any point. You just might happen to flip through and it's the rare hour they're not playing yoga videos. It's like, oh, it's that show with the girl with the fingers. I have learned about it over time, but this is probably like the one show that had like a long life in first run syndication that I've seen basically none of.
That's wild. Yeah. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. That's why I felt like this is what our show was built for, because a lot of people like vaguely know about it or sort of remember it. But like I watched this series every Saturday afternoon from like 1988 to 1990. It was one of my comfort shows. Like I would watch Small Wonder on Fox Channel 11, switch over to KTLA Channel 5 for Out of This World, back to Fox for a rerun of Mr. Belvedere, go back to Channel 5 for Charles in Charge. Like my Saturdays were booked, man. Like I was ready to watch all the syndicated shows. And I think I just also related to Out of This World in a weird way because my mom is a tiny, peppy, fashionable lady. She dressed like Donna. Like their couches had a floral print like ours. Just weird things like that. Evie reminded me of a babysitter I had who lived down the street. And plus, when my parents got divorced, which was a few years after this, but in my memory, like it all comes together. My mom was, good looking lady. She had a group of goofy guys always coming around our house to help out, wishing she would date them, but she did not. And that's exactly the reason all these loser guys keep popping into the world of Evie and Donna on this show. It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough, so I could really relate to what was going on in their world.
That's such a dark memory when you think about it. Like, I was in that same boat where it's like, why does my mom love all these security guards from the Smithsonian? It's just like, and then I think my wife was like, you know what they were, right? And I was like, shut up, don't talk about my mom like that.
I don't think any of these guys were a booty call. I will tell you
no,
that.
We'll talk about that.
Anyway, but let's find out now that we've gotten a handle on what this show was about. Let's find out, were you missing something or were you not? But let's start out with what you liked in our cheers.
I like that it's completely mindless entertainment. Like, doing research for this show, there are a lot of sites and books like Television Without Pity that will say this was the worst show ever made. And it's like, I don't know about that. But as far as substance, like it's pretty. It's great to look at. It's the 80s in a time capsule. The season premiere, season 2, where she wishes for like a cool room, and it looks like they just backed up over our heads from Facts of Life and just furnished her room with it, you know? Like, I love it for the same reason I guess I love TNBC, where it's just low stakes television, but it seems even lower. Like, TNBC, it was like, they're all trying to graduate high school. They're trying to date the pretty girl. They're trying to, like, not get in trouble with the principal. Things like those tropes. But, like, Out of This World's weird because, like, there are a lot of people there who don't matter.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big cast, but most of them aren't important. So I always say, like, syndication, you should be able to drop into any episode and it doesn't matter. And, like, this is comfort TV. You can just shut your brain off. You don't have to wonder about who's that guy. Because let me spoil it for you. If you do figure out who they are, it still doesn't answer your questions. So it's just kind of like, I love that it is just kind of mindless, turn your brain off Saturday afternoon television. That's my sweet spot.
Yeah, really, what carries it is the premise, right? And there's a metaphor. I'm getting very heady this time around, Will, but like the premise and the metaphor of the show really works. Like, and especially for the time, like it's a girl, she's entering puberty, she's going through changes, but in this case, they are literal special abilities to help her navigate this new world of hormones and the journey into adulthood and everything. And so, for those who don't know, the show begins, the pilot episode is her 13th birthday, and then the series ends on her 18th birthday. So the audience literally goes through the entire journey of her teenage years with her. But also, it's just cool that she has superpowers. You know, like that's an awesome premise. And every season literally starts with Evie's next birthday, and Troy endows her with a new power or makes her aware that she can now do this thing. Like, obviously, the pilot we talked about, she can stop time. That's the thing. You know, she puts her fingers together, we get a sound effect, everybody freezes. Sometimes it's the video freezing, sometimes it's people just standing still. And so, like, that's the main thing for the first season, is just freezing, unfreezing, freezing, unfreezing. She does practical jokes with it, or sometimes it's helping her, or sometimes she's doing it unfairly in a baseball game or whatever, you know, so that's interesting. But also, there is an interesting development in season 2, because one of the things is only she can hear her dad talking to her. Her mom can't hear, and she gets 4 wishes on her birthday. She wastes 2 of them accidentally, and then, like you said, one of them is to get her cool new upgraded room with like a hand-shaped chair and all this other stuff that's like so 80s. And then her actual power, though, that she gets is the ability eventually to reverse time. So now she can like make stuff go back and forth, you know, like if she wants. But also, mixed into that is like a one-off power. I don't see her use it very often. She can insert her thoughts into someone else's mind and make them say what she wants them to say. She's not mind controlling them, but she's inserting words into their mouths, and then they go, oh, what's happening? You're like Uncle Beano's like, oh, did I say that? You know, that type of thing.
It's
But
space
also,
ventriloquism.
yeah, something along those lines, human ventriloquism. But also, she's able to time travel with her reverse power. She goes back to 1972 or whatever when her parents met. So that's a weird one. She also gains the ability to split the different sides of her personality into a separate physical version of herself. That's an episode I had recorded on a VHS tape as a kid, and I had a crush on sassy Evie with her crimped hair. She's so 80s. And then in season 3, she gets the ability to transmute objects into other things. Like she could turn a pair of fuzzy slippers into fashionable high heels, or a pile of rocks into a literal rock band of hunky guys. You know, like it's so strange. They keep adding on more and more. And I'm sure there's more that I've missed. There is not like a fan page. There is not an archive. Even Wikipedia has like 2 descriptions for the episodes. There is no cataloging of this show. And so like, I feel like it's my mission now. I'm going to have to get to that eventually. Like in my sleeping hours, I'll sleep, type out, and create a website somehow. But anyway, it's really just whatever they need to happen on the show to have something interesting, right? Is kind of ultimately what it becomes.
Right. And I mean, I want to give credit to Maureen Flanagan because I thought she was great. She's not like a great child actor. She's a great actor. She wasn't struggling in the role. And like, if you go back to season 1, just based on her hair, like as she ages, She kind of changes as people do, but I feel like if you showed someone a still image from season one and you told them, hey, did you know this was Kristen Bell's first role? They would believe you.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like that first season, I'm like, wow, Kristen Bell's really awesome in this show. Like I knew better, but like it just helped the brain to make a connection there. Like she's really good. Donna Pescow's good. Donna Pescow has what I will call Fox mom face. It's that right era of like Donna Pescow could have been cast in like 3 different forgotten Fox sitcoms, you know, because that's just like how she was. Like I love her. There's something about her face. I don't know. I saw her in an episode of Love Boat during my marathon like a year ago, and I was like, who is she? And that's when I remembered she's the mom in this show. But it's just kind of like there's something about her there.
Well, I was going to ask because I looked up her career. I only know her from Out of This World. Looked up Saturday Night Fever one time. And they're like, oh, she's in Saturday Night Fever. I'm like, okay. And then apparently she was on a ton of soap operas and a show I assume you know all about, which is Even Stevens.
Yep. I didn't watch Even Stevens, but that's Shia. That's Shia LaBeouf's big break,
Yeah.
and Christy Carlson Romano before she got Kim Possible. But it's funny you mentioned Saturday Night Fever because she is in that. And connected to that, there is currently a Capital One ad with John Travolta as Santa, but he's doing the Saturday Night Fever thing, and she's in it.
Oh,
Yes. Because I guess they couldn't get Fran Drescher. Because I always remember, like, I watched that movie, like, after The Nanny was over, and I was like, how old is this one?
another cast member I want to point out is Doug McClure. He is great as this Kyle Applegate character, especially the backstory they give him. He's a former actor turned politician, and they make like Sonny Bono jokes and all these other people who have done that. But he says that he is kind of playing an exaggerated version of his actual self, of his life, because he was an actor that was acting like all throughout the 50s into the 90s, right? And he was always supposedly like this super good looking hunky guy. And in this universe of Out of This World, he was Cowboy Kyle. And then in the 60s, Doug McClure was a working actor, and he was on The Virginian into the 70s, 1962, 1971. And then he also has a little bit of Adam West that they've built into him because they say he had a Batman 66 style show called Mosquito Man, and he often dons the costume to relive his glory days. And especially there's one episode in particular where they're making a Mosquito Man movie. This is right around Batman 89 being announced, but they don't want him to star. They want him to make a cameo to pass the torch to Mosquito Woman, who is played by Spice Williams, who we just talked about. She had an episode of Mama's Family where she was a pro wrestler wearing a bee costume. She was typecast as Buff Bug Lady. Poor Spice Williams. The biggest thing, though, and I like made this connection when I started watching The Simpsons heavily, is that Troy McClure from The Simpsons, and, obviously his joke is he starred in a ton of B and C level movies, right? And that was Doug McClure's career too. Stuff like The Land That Time Forgot, At the Earth's Core, Firebird 2015 AD, and so many other silly things. But literally Mike Scully, who would go on to be a showrunner on The Simpsons, was a writer on Out of This World. And so he says that when Doug McClure saw that they had created a character based on him in his career, he actually thought Troy McClure was funny. He's like, they're making fun of me, but he still like took it with good humor. And that's what I feel like. He just seems like the kind of guy who's like, well, I was sort of famous and I was never big, but I could play that in my character and inform the role. And it's so much fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him. You told me to watch that Mosquito Man episode. The thing people don't talk about with the Batman 89 nostalgia is the lobbying that Adam West did trying to get in that movie. Like, that's the part that we've just like, let's just talk about Michael Keaton. But it was almost like when Sean Young was lobbying to be Catwoman. You know, there was a lot of craziness going on in Hollywood around this franchise. And I remember, like, when they first, like, there was the reunion of 66. It was the 20th anniversary. God, that's so long ago. And they were on Arsenio's Fox show before his syndicated show. It was like all the living cast. And he's like, yeah, there's a movie coming up. And he really thought he was gonna get that role.
I know he was on Saturday Night Live talking about it. He would go anywhere he could. What was it? I was like, was it Inside Edition or was it A Current Affair? So many. I mean, he was going everywhere he could to say, "You want me, right? You want me." So poor Adam West never made it. But here's the other thing too I want to say is with the Kyle character, there is some like a changing of position and roles later in season 3 because he's the mayor for the first 2.5 seasons, and then he's running for re-election, and he's like, everybody thinks that I could never win if somebody's running against me. I want to prove them wrong. So Donna, being his friend, says, okay, I'll run against you, but not for real. But then she starts realizing he's really not a good mayor, and the points she's making, everybody else is in favor of. So they're tied on election night, and then he goes in and gives her a pity vote because he's so in his own head thinking he's the greatest, and that vote puts it over, and she becomes the mayor. So he's out of a job, and she makes him chief of police. And so for the rest of the
how
series,
that happened?
yeah,
Because I read that and I'm like, because for the first 2 seasons, I'm like, what the hell does Donna do?
yeah,
And
she
then
has
she
nothing.
opens that party planning thing where I'm like, this was a lame job in '88. It's like, this is not a career. This is what you do when your husband makes computers. And like, she wasn't good at it. Oh, she's the mayor. Now I gotta watch this whole series.
You gotta check it. That's what I'm saying. There are developments, but the other thing too that I have to believe that you would love in watching this series, Will, is there are so many cameos that at the time are just actors needing work. But looking back, it's kind of a who's who of 80s character actors and older stars trying to just get a paycheck. Like Tom Bosley has a recurring role. He's Evie's Antarian grandfather. He's on like 2 or 3 episodes. Betsy Palmer, aka Mrs. Voorhees from the first Friday the 13th movie, she's Donna's mother, so she's Evie's grandma. And then you have Norman Fell, Lyle Alzado, Richard Mole, Richard Keel, all the big Richards. Florence
I missed the
Henderson.
Norman Fell episode.
You sure did. He plays a doctor. Yeah.
Man.
Pop
Does he look
star-
at the camera?
Tiffany is in there, Mr. T. And then in addition to directing 11 episodes, Scott Baio pops up in a cameo as himself, but then he plays 2 different characters between seasons 2 and 3. It's just fun. Like there's a lot of others that'll, Ruth Buzzy and all these other people that just show up, but it's just kind of fun to who's going to show up next.
Who'd have thought Scott Baio would be the Jeffrey Tambor of the Out of This World universe?
It's rough. It's rough to mention it now, but at the time he was beloved. I do want to ask your opinion too, and maybe this goes to Jeers. We'll see. But as goofy as he is, I love the Buzz character. He's like Max from Saved by the Bell. He just comes in once an episode. He does some prop comedy with a lot of silly puns, and then he disappears. I don't even know. Is he Latino? Is he Italian? I don't know what he is. He's just foreign accent and comes in with looking silly, and he makes me crack up every time. And there are a lot more annoying, stupid weirdos doing bad physical comedy that they try to work in throughout the series, especially when Buzz kind of disappears. The 4th season in particular is really bad with that, but it shines a light on how talented he was. So I was just curious about your take on Buzz.
It does go in jeers, but like when I saw him, I was like, I bet Adam likes this guy.
My kind of guy. Last thing I'll just say, the series finale. Did you watch the last episode?
I watched the last 10 minutes of the last.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty great because Troy finally comes back to Earth. Sort of. He's in a weird digital body. It's just him in a silhouette with a blocky outline. And it's kind of a neat effect for the time, but it's nice that they actually allowed the family to be reunited. But I like also that they leave it open essentially for a reunion movie, another season, something, because in the final scene, Donna accidentally gets transported to Antarius, and then they just cut to the credits. Like that's basically the end of the series. You're like, huh? But it's nice that they got to wrap things up on their own terms in some way. I don't know if you noticed it too. I'm pretty sure it was not Burt Reynolds playing Troy at the end of the series. It's
Oh yeah, like the physical. It wasn't. I had questions about that, and that's why I hate that it has such a sparse wiki page. Like, there's nothing out there. In that, everywhere you read says the show was canceled. So like, it didn't end. It was canceled, apparently due to low ratings, which have to be pretty bad when you're in syndication. But the episode count is 96. syndication routinely would stop at 100. So it's like they were almost there. Where are those other 4 episodes? Was this intentional? Because it is an ending where like you could say like, oh well, that's how they ended it. But like I almost feel like they thought they were getting a 5th season. You know, like
Maybe.
it's a very unsatisfying ending. But then it kind of, you know what? Like, it's like of all the people to send to Antarius, like it would suck if they sent Evie. You know, she's the star. They could send Donna. She don't really have anything going on.
Yeah,
But-
it's an odd choice. It's abrupt, but it's also just like, hey, I mean, if you're going to end it, let it be something that big and that interesting. But it seems to me, Will, that there might be more in the other column this time around. So why don't we get into our jeers?
There are a lot of what I will call unnecessary men in this show. And I think it is to imply that even though she doesn't have a father, she still has a strong male presence in her life. But that ties into my biggest issue with this entire show. It feels like it has an agenda. And like, even if you read all the reviews that say it's like the worst show on television, even the shows that don't go that far, they'll say like, it's not really funny, but it's heavy on morality. And there's certain aspects to it where just the look of it and how plain a lot of like everything that not Evie is, like her boyfriend is boring. Her
Oh, yeah.
best friend is boring. Like, there's really not a lot going on there. This feels like a show that was secretly funded by like the Family Channel or something to really impress upon us family values, and they cut a lot of corners in doing so. Because if you look at it from a modern eye, certain things don't add up. Like, all those dudes are gay. Like, we can say they're gay coded characters. Those are gay men. Uncle Beano, and every now and then they would throw in these like scenes where he's kind of trying to hit on women, but he's
Right.
in drag, so you're like, okay. But like, you never really feel that he's actually into that, and he dresses like Mr. Belvedere even though he's supposed to be like 30. Then you've got Doug McClure, Kyle Applegate. Like, he shows up in the pilot and you're like, who is this guy? And then you find out he's the mayor. You're like, why the hell is the mayor coming to a child's birthday party? He lives in the neighborhood because he gave him a noise ordinance, but you never seem to get like, oh, he and Donna went to high school together.
There's no
Or-
explanation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, why is he in their lives? And then you get Buzz, who Buzz is the quintessential 80s gay-coded character where he is the effeminate foreigner. He's Bronson Pinchot, but not Perfect Strangers. Serge from Beverly Hills Cop. You know, it's like his nondescript accent. Is he French? Is he from Italy? Is he from Spain? Sometimes he seems really effeminate. Sometimes he's really into women like Pepe Le Pew. You don't know which way he's gonna go, but you like throw them all together and you've got a West Hollywood version of 3 Men and a Baby. There's something up there. But also with the forced agenda, the structure of the show doesn't work because they really hammer home that Troy came to Earth on assignment. He and Donna fell in love. They had a true courtship. They conceived Evie, and then he had to go back home or go away on a mission. But they're still married, and they're still an intact family despite the distance between them. When it would make so much more sense to say Donna had a one-night stand with an alien, and this is her life now. The miles they cross and the like obstacles they jump through to maintain this communication. You could even say that like they should have kept it like it was season 1 where only Evie could talk to him. Because once changed the situation where Donna can now talk to Troy, she's way too happy and lovey-dovey when it should be, how the hell did you leave me here with this kid and you're off in God knows where? Are you ever coming back? From what I saw, she never kirks out on him. Like the entire time, she's like, I love you so much. They're like these star-crossed lovers. And that's how the show ends, that like they'll still be star-crossed, but in opposite places, you know, because now I assume Troy is stuck here, which I don't know what that would look like because she took his pod home.
Yeah.
So it's very forced in that like 80s suspension of disbelief. But if I were to bring this show back, which we'll get to, I'm going to cut the bullshit Stop acting like this is the perfect nuclear family divided by space-time.
Yeah, there is a lot there where you're just like, I don't know how any of this adds up, and that is for sure. And yeah, there are too many guys, and there is too much of like nothing. Like, I don't see the agenda. I just see the show as pointless all the way across. I don't even see like life lessons. I don't see very special episode. I think there's one episode in the fourth season where Evie might be pregnant, so then they started stepping into that stuff, but it's just like, Joe Alasky is an awesome voice actor. If you guys don't know, he was Plucky Duck on, Tiny Toon Adventures, and just does all like the Looney Tunes characters. There's like kind of a group of guys that trade off and they just all like do the Looney Tunes characters. So he had a great career for years and years doing that. But like seeing him here, like he doesn't have a point of view really. Like he has a few quips and a few like, sarcastic remarks, but it's like, why are you here? If he was more of a scoundrel or a cad or a womanizer and it wasn't Joe Alasky, they did a different type of character, it might be a great foil to Donna. Maybe there's sibling rivalry, but there's none of that. And then, like you say, the friends and the boyfriend, Lindsay and Chris, they're just blah next to Maureen Flanagan's Evie. And so that's kind of boring because it also with the Chris character, I'm like, are you guys dating or are you just friends that go to school dances together? Because you're always around, but you're not kissing. You're not like sneaking off together. Maybe that starts to happen, but it's just like even the Lindsay character, she has like a lisp at the beginning of the series. And that's about as close as she gets to having any personality. So I'm just like, nobody matters. Nobody does anything. And there's no edge to anything. But also, again, I don't see any lesson. I just see like, let's do some alien stuff every once in a while, and otherwise generic sitcom with no point.
I think the agenda forcing is not the moral. It's not the full house, everybody hugs and it's over in 22 minutes. It's more about like, look, you can still be wacky and fun and adhere to quote unquote normal family values, even though they're not a normal family. But like you said, there's so many things that don't work here. Joe Alasky, despite knowing who he was, he does nothing here. Even when he does voices, they're not that good. I don't know if they told him to like dial it down just so like he wasn't going to give them 100% because this wasn't true voice actor work. But when he would do things, be like, I guess that was Rodney Dangerfield, like, or it was just any other Borscht Belt comedian, like it was so nondescript. But there are places where I see where edges were softened. Kyle Applegate as the mayor is supposed to be Donna's boyfriend. And somewhere, somebody said, no, she's still madly in love with this alien guy. And there probably was supposed to be some will they, won't they tension. Because, I mean, like, does he have a wife? Do we meet her? We just know he lives in the neighborhood. And also with Uncle Beano, where does he live? Because he's close enough that he can come over in the middle of the night in his pajamas, but is he in like a guest house? Because we haven't even talked about how their house is huge for a woman who does nothing and a husband who lives in space. Now, it seems like they inherited it from the mom, because when they go back to 1972, it's the same house with worse furniture. But Beano apparently lives next door or in the backyard because of how quickly he can like be on the scene. So it's just, there's so many unanswered questions there. But like you were saying, I guess in the lack of a moral, there's nothing there. It kind of falls apart. There were a couple episodes I actually had to like keep rewinding to make sure I didn't miss anything because they don't develop organically. There is, I want to say it is season 2, episode 1. So it is her 14th birthday, and she's upset because everyone's treating her like a child. And Donna says that like she wants to go to dinner, just the two of them, but she's been babying her because she gives her a stuffed animal instead of the stereo she wanted. And then everyone's planning this surprise party at Goody Goodies, which is the Mac or every other hangout from a late 80s show with neon and benches and all. Like it was the max. But when they get there is Buzz as a magician, and he has like a lovely assistant. Evie freezes time and she makes the assistant go away. She tricks her because she's a moron and says that like, oh, Pat Sajak is looking to replace Vanna White. He wants her to do it, and she pushes her out the door, and then she unfreezes time, and no one is like, hey, where'd she go? show, it's kind of like, oh, he made her disappear. And Buzz went along with it, knowing he doesn't know magic. No one was worried about where did this blonde girl go, but it didn't accomplish anything. The point of the whole setup is Evie is tired of these immature things, so she took matters into her own hands. However, there's no reckoning. She never has the conversation with Donna that you're required to have in this sitcom structure of, Mom, I'm growing up. And I appreciate the teddy bear, but I really wanted a stereo, and I'll always be your little girl, but I'm also becoming a woman. Like, they're supposed to have that speech, and it doesn't happen. And so I get to the end of that episode, like, what did I just watch here? Like, what did we accomplish here? And that's kind of like every episode. I mean, the next one, I think it is, of that season, now that she can travel through time, she and Beano go back. Well, she goes back to 1972 because she wants to see her parents meet. And she throws every time travel rule out of the window that we have learned from every angle of pop culture. It's like she finds her mom, she tells her, I'm your daughter. She wants to stand there and meet her dad. And when that doesn't work, she brings Uncle Beano to the past. And you're just kind of like, there are just no rules here. You just do whatever you want for no reason whatsoever. That bothers me. They're not working towards 96 episodes is a lot of episodes for foolishness.
Yeah, it really is. And I think my final jeer is I see it weigh on the cast, but specifically Maureen Flanagan by the end of the series, because the first two seasons, you could tell she is so excited. She's really clever, and her reactions to things and her line deliveries are very inventive. But by seasons 3 and 4, she's over it. And I don't know if she was trying to be more of an actress and less of an excited, peppy kid, but it just feels like the plots are what are pulling her along. And she's likable enough, but she doesn't appear to be having any fun on screen. And that just starts kind of translating, the show's energy just kind of keeps dropping. They keep bringing in new goofy characters, and none of them are fun because the main cast is just kind of well, we're doing what we've always been doing, and maybe a little less energy. There's not much going on here. So that is just kind of disappointing. Although before we get out of here, Will, I do have to ask you one question, because they do have the obligatory let's go to a theme park episode where they go to Universal Studios. They're having some fun. It's like, okay, we're going by the Jaws ride, okay? That you go by on the tram. And Jaws is scaring the girls because they're in the back lot hunting for Tom Cruise, who is supposedly filming a movie. So they do that. And then meanwhile, Kyle has one of his old movies is playing at a theater inside Universal Studios. So the adults go to watch that and make fun of him. And then Kyle and Beano end up in the Miami Vice stunt show. But Kyle just runs out there and literally starts fighting all the stuntmen, and they beat him up too. He doesn't understand that it's just a show. There's just a lot of weird stuff there. They even see King Kong at one point. So I'm curious for you, in the pantheon of sitcom goes to theme park, how did you think this one held up? Cheer or jeer?
I mean, cheer. Nothing is ever going to top when Different Strokes went. Because, they met Kit, they met Michael Knight, you meet Sam for the first time. That's an important... Very often, these trips are worthless. There are only 2 times where it's the Different Strokes one, and then when Full House went to Disney, don't they find Steve again down there? But other than that, the trip, it's a commercial, So, it did its job. They saw everything there was to see at Universal during that era. So, I'll give them a B+ for that.
That's what I say, too. It's a nice, video postcard of what Universal Studios was at that moment in time, especially since eventually the King Kong ride burnt down. That section caught on fire, and it's gone now. So it was preserved on film, at least for a moment in time, which I'm grateful for that. But here's the thing, King Kong became a burn victim. They couldn't bring him back to life. But this show, like we say, ended abruptly. The heart stopped, so it seems. Can we get it resuscitated? Can we bring it back as the Show Doctors? All right, Will. So you said you had some idea here. What do you want to do with this?
Ooh, this one's tricky because in that era, a lot of failed network shows went to syndication. But I think I want to go the other way. I want to take this to network because there is a lot of great raw material there for a Fox sitcom. We already talked about Donna Pescow has Fox mom face. Like, if we reimagine it, we're not going to continue it. There was another thing that happened with syndication that, like, we haven't touched on too many shows. Mama's Family kind of fell into that, but a lot of the times when a show left network and went to syndication, it wasn't an instant thing. After a while, they got into like a rhythm where it's like, okay, we'll keep producing it and then keep it going, like Punky Brewster. But there's some shows like We Got It Made, which was part of this whole NBC package that we were talking about here. We Got It Made was a show that was like the 83, 84 season, and then it reappeared in syndication in 87, 88. So they had done other jobs. There were other contracts signed in there. So I kind of want to do that sort of thing of like enough time where it's a reimagining. I don't want to do a second chance Boys Will Be Boys mid-run switch because we've already gotten 96 episodes of this, but it might be interesting to see like kind of like when we got Sabrina Goes to College, like we would see Evie in and she could even live at home if you want to. But I am going to kind of retcon everything that came before. Like, we will know some characters, they will be familiar, but we're going to Fox this up. And if we know anything about late 80s, early 90s Fox, this is Sunday night, right before Married with Children. Like, so we're getting rid of this whole thing of Donna and Troy are still married and star-crossed. It was a one-night stand, and she talks trash about him every chance she gets. The same way that Peg talks about Al when he won't sleep with her or he won't buy her bonbons, she's going to talk about Troy that same way. We're going to give Evie a best friend played by like Joey Lauren Adams, which is time appropriate, you know, and like it's not going to last long, but like I still feel there is stuff in this concept to be mined that they didn't come close to in all those years of syndication, and I would probably enjoy a season and a half of Fox's out of this world than the 4 seasons of syndicated out of this.
Well, my question is this. You always say you know the right network where this should be, because in your reimagining that you're telling me, I'm almost imagining this feels like it belongs on UPN, if you ask me.
No, because UPN doesn't exist yet. That's the thing. UPN doesn't come along till 95. 95 is too late for that.
Okay.
This has to be I know I wanted those years in there, but let's say the 93, 94 season, and it's gone by the time UPN is about to launch. That's how I would do it then. If I did it now, because I have a two-pronged thing here, if I did it now, it would be a freeform series. There would be no comedy to it, that like she wouldn't even know her father or that he was an alien. It's just Donna would keep this dark secret. Donna would be Molly Ringwald. You gotta have this like former teen star who was once in the position of the current teen star, you know, and it's like it would basically be Roswell. You'll find out in the 3rd season finale that like Troy was an alien, but the show will get canceled, but they'll all do the convention circuit for the next 15 years. There'll be fanfic everywhere. It'll be glorious.
Oh, wow. See, I went kind of a different direction in that I do want to make it a modern day revival, if you will, but with a very different angle, because like I said previously, the series left off on a cliffhanger that I think is a great point to pick up on and acknowledge. So my idea is that Donna stayed on Antarius. Troy made it back and they got to live their life together. All those years that they missed out on with him where he needed to be. And that way he didn't have to find a way to come back to Earth. Nothing would pull him away again. But the idea to me was that Evie was okay with that. Because again, the end of the series, she's 18, she's an adult, and she could still talk to them, but she's like, I want to live my life here. This is where my friends are, however boring they are. You know, like this is where my life is. So during these last few decades, that's what she's been doing. She got married, she had a daughter, she got divorced, like she's lived a life. And what happens though is Troy has died. Burt Reynolds has passed away. So she's finally willing to make that trip and go to her father's homeworld for that service, however they do it there. But I see it as a situation. It's kind of like if Superman went to Krypton, he would just be normal. he wouldn't have all his superpowers. And to me, because Evie's only half, like when she goes back, she has her daughter, I'm naming Lila in this case. I think she'd be played by somebody like McKenna Grace, this older teenager now who's coming with her, and she manifests full powers for the most part. I mean, she's mostly human. She's 3/4 human, you know, so she gets a lot. And then Evie, now she has very dampened powers. You know, she's half human, so she could do a little bit, but not as much. But the big thing is Donna has been there for all these years and she's 100% human. So she had a lot of powers that manifested there. So now you're seeing what her life is like and all the awesome things that she's been able to do for the people on the planet and everything else. And just so everybody knows, Maureen Flanagan, she doesn't do interviews. She's like a documentary filmmaker now. She doesn't act. She doesn't do any of that anymore. So like she wouldn't want to be on a series, I don't think. So she comes in, she does her cameo for the first 2 or 3 episodes and she's out. And it's Grandma and Lila, and they are having the adventures together on this new world. So we're seeing everything from a new perspective. It's a fish out of water on this alien planet. All the lore that they spread throughout the series comes to life a little bit. And we just really start understanding, you know, what it is to be Antarian, you know, and that's what she's learning. And I think that would be a really fun twist on everything. It's like a human girl has powers on an alien planet. And what does that mean?
You Waverly placed it. You're not. So Disney Channel had the show The Wizards of Waverly Place, and that's what put Selena Gomez on the map. It ran for, let's say, 5 seasons, and they just brought it back in a revival, which instead it's beyond Waverly Place, where like the brother on the show is the star and he doesn't have powers anymore. But Selena Gomez shows up in the pilot to drop off a teenage wizard who needs training. She can't stick around because she's Selena Gomez. So the brother, now powerless, but still has his like knowledge from being a wizard, has to train this young girl who might be the savior of the world, basically.
This is like the 3rd time in as many episodes. Well, Disney Channel needs to hire me. I need to be a showrunner. I've got all the same ideas as them. And I don't know, unless I'm secretly watching all the Disney Channel shows in my sleep and I'm absorbing everything because I've kept my distance, but apparently not.
We're too smart for TV.
Yeah. It's how it goes. It's how it goes. But either way, yeah, I think it'd be an interesting take however we decide to go. But this has been fun. So thank you for this present, Will. Thank you for this gift, because for all its warts and craziness, Out of This World is still just a warm, fuzzy memory for me. And like you say, just of its time.
All right. Well, next time we are going on a mission with the Foundation of Law and Government, because at one point in time when we were young, we were taught that one man could make a difference. So what happens if you have 5 men or people and talking vehicles? That's right. Team Knight Rider, baby. That 1-season wonder from Universal itself. We are talking about that next time on Remember That Show.
Ooh, this is going to be interesting. Yeah, I can't wait. I've always heard about this show, never seen it. Will, very well versed. He's going to be able to give us his thoughts. So I'm excited. But in the meantime, tell us what you thought of this episode, Out of This World. I want to know if you guys remember it and what stood out to you. Find us on social media at Remember Show Pod, and we would love to get your thoughts and reactions. Share the show around. If you know other people that are always talking about these shows that nobody else seems to have a recollection of and they would feel at home listening to our podcast, yeah, spread the word, why don't you? But in the meantime, we hope that you are having a great ramp up to the holiday season, and we will be back with Team Knight Rider soon. But until next time, we're changing the channel.
This has been a presentation of Geekster Media.